think we won't know the conclusions of Sue Gray's report until we see them. But to your question about the pressure that she's under, I mean, she's a resilient civil servant and will stand up to them. But the pressures that ministers and MPs are putting on this report, it does seem to me, are more than the report can bear. Sue Gray is an impartial civil servant, but she's not independent of the government. She's not some court of law or judicial inquiry sitting looking into all of this. She can talk to people. She can establish the facts as best she can, but she can't see what was in the Prime Minister's mind at any time. She doesn't have powers to summon witnesses or anything else like that. So she will establish the facts, but it's very difficult then for a civil servant to say that these are the consequences that should happen. So I completely understand why the government's saying wait for Sue Gray's report, but it doesn't seem a particularly sustainable position for the civil service to be in.
So do you think they're hoping for a kind of whitewash?
I don't think it'll be a whitewash, and I think it will be a faithful representation of the facts as they've been presented to this investigation. But you would expect there to be enough ambiguity in all of these circumstances. Was the Prime Minister there for how long? What was his understanding of the situation? For there to be something in this report where ministers and the Prime Minister can seize on it and say, "Aha, this means that that I'm off the hook." Right. But I mean, we just have to wait and see. There's not a lot of point, I don't think, speculating about the outcome of it until we've got the report.
But also on the point of wait and see, I mean, to some extent, you could say that, especially after the government admitted that these parties took place and the Prime Minister had been present at some of them at least, the report matters a lot less than it would have done a few weeks ago.
I think that's right. I think that's another aspect of why so much pressure is being put on this report. Actually, I mean, if what we see from the polls and from your reporting are to be believed, the public has already made up its mind about this. So we may end up, if the Prime Minister does end up remaining in office throughout, then we may end up with a situation where the public has lost confidence in the standards and rule following that the government's been pursuing through this, but the Prime Minister has managed to remain in office on a technicality, which points to me that MPs and ministers, when they're making up their minds what to do through a situation like this, they shouldn't be looking to one civil servant and an individual report. They should be applying their own political and broader judgment as to the right person to be Prime Minister.
Two more briefly, if I may. There were, of course, also civil servants, not just present, but actually inviting people to parties. Does that help the government in some ways?
Well, on the Sue Gray aspect of civil servants, it's worth noting that I think Sue Gray's report is the right forum to look into the behaviour of civil servants, and then that can be disciplined through civil service disciplinary procedures in the usual way. Whether it helps the government or not, I'm not sure. I doubt it helps them with public opinion. I think it is probably helpful for the Prime Minister if there are lots of other events that are subject to investigation where everyone agrees that he wasn't present. But I don't think, I think the overall impression is pretty clear.
Right, and briefly and finally, ultimately, he has to judge himself, doesn't he? He is his own jury.
Yes, so the way the system works in the UK is again, a civil servant, cabinet secretary, or an official like Sue Gray can investigate these sorts of allegations. But in the end, it's the Prime Minister who decides if there's been a breach of the ministerial code. That sort of just about works if you're looking, if an official is looking into it to advise the Prime Minister about another Secretary of State. It really doesn't work very well if you're presenting it to the Prime Minister himself. So in the end, yes, there's a judge and jury point there.
Alex Thomas, thank you very much indeed for coming on the programme.